Well, India's largest airline in a great set of numbers coming for October-December quarter. Net profit at 2449 crore rupees. The profitability has also dipped a bit. What is the reason to this contributed to these numbers? How the sky is looking ahead? Pieter Elbers, CEO of Indigo, is joining me to talk all that and much more. Welcome to us, Peter. And let's begin by talking about the main contributors that were in this quarter that resulted in this kind of numbers which you have registered. What were the main points or factors behind this?
Well, we have seen, thank you for having me here, we have seen a very strong quarter when it comes to passenger demand. So the first half of the year was still somewhat muted. We had elections, then there was the heat wave. So there were a lot of different factors which I guess muted somewhat the demand. We have seen a very strong recovery in the demand. October, November, December were very strong months. So we have topped a 31 million customers in a single quarter. November, for the first time in our history, we touched 10 million customers in a single month. December was even more, close to 11 million. So that demand has been very strong. And I think what Indigo has done very well, and with gratitude to all my colleagues in making that possible, is having the capacity in place to serve that demand. And that has resulted into very strong numbers for the quarter itself.
Oh, but Peter, this was holiday season also, festival season also. Now, in the coming few months, for the next 2 months, the holiday season is not there. How confident are you of maintaining this demand or this performance now?
Yeah, well, if we compare year over year, last year was also holiday season, right? Diwali was also there last year, Christmas was also there last year. So if I compare the quarter over quarter, this quarter over last year's quarter, we've seen a very solid demand. The total market has grown 8% in October, 12% in November, 8% in December. Indigo has grown even more than that. So we've seen a very solid demand year over year. Going forward, we're actually very confident. The penetration of air travel in India is still relatively limited compared to other parts of the world. So there's still millions of potential travelers to attract on board of our plane. So with that, we're very confident and we aspire to continue to grow going forward.
What about the capacity addition and also groundings? Well, groundings have been hounding you since long time, but now it has improved. So what are the overall scenario when it comes to capacity addition and the groundings?
Yeah, well, Indigo has been confronted, and perhaps more than some of the other airlines in the world, with supply chain challenges. With that, at the beginning of this year, we had a very significant number of planes on the ground as a consequence of these supply chain challenges. Last quarter, we said it had peaked at that point in time, and we will see a gradual decline going forward. This quarter, we have actually seen a reduction as compared to previous quarter. Maybe just to remind you, all the quarters prior to that, every quarter we were increasing. So this is the first quarter where we sort of have seen to turn the corner in that number. We have had a lot of additional capacity added in terms of wet leases and temporary arrangements, because thanks to that we could still provide the growth going forward. But clearly in the quarters ahead we do expect that number of planes on the ground will continue to taper down.
And what about the expansion, domestic and global? And is the global expansion going to be over the domestic expansion? Like, is it going to be really keeping domestic away for some time so that you can expand more internationally?
No, Indigo will continue to do both. Today we fly roughly 450-ish routes domestic, and we fly 100 routes international, generally speaking. For the first time in the last quarter, we have added a 28% of all our capacity is international. So 72 domestic, 28% of all our ASKs is international. And we grow faster international than we do domestic. But clearly, given the basis and the size of what we have domestic, that domestic growth in absolute sense is still larger than it is domestic. So our strategy is very clear. We solidify the foundation. India's home. India's the basis of what we do. So we continue to invest here. But at the same time, we see the growing demand for international travel and all the new additions we had. And most recently, we've added Langkawi and Penang. And prior to that, we went to Denpasar. And we just see the enormous demand in the market for those travels. So we continue to add that. We will continue to add international destinations, and by the end of this fiscal year we expect to be 40 or even 40 plus when it comes to international destinations.
And when will we see you going to Europe? There were reports saying that you have made even hirings in UK for your summer operations.
You know, we have a strategy, and that is moving Indigo. You know, when I joined 3 years ago, it was a large domestic airline, and the ambition clearly is to move to become a global aviation giant. And with India becoming the third largest economy in the world by 27, India deserves airlines of the size, which is a reflection of the size of the country in population, economy and business potential. And Indigo is clearly committed to be such a global airline. So we've ordered 350s for that, Airbus 350. That will bring us basically everywhere in the world. But they will be delivered in 27 only. We will have the Airbus XLR, which can indeed bring us to Europe, further into Asia. By the end of this calendar year, they will be there. But clearly, looking at the demand, we took a decision to investigate, it's not a firm decision yet, to investigate the opportunity for having some additional capacity on the shorter term. And that indeed has created some news reports that Indigo is preparing for further growth. And I think it's a reflection of what's happening with India in terms of economic growth, in terms of economic potential, in terms of foreign investments, in terms of Indian companies going overseas.
Two factors, rupee volatility versus dollar and crude. So how do you see these two factors, and hedging is possibility for both? So what is your hedging strategy also?
Yeah, well, this quarter which we had, basically these two factors were to some extent precisely opposite. So whereas the fuel was lower, clearly we had a significant impact on the Forex, on the foreign exchange in this very quarter. So if we look to the performance, the business performance, it was extremely well. 3,000 crores of profit last year, 3,800 crores this year. So that's a jump of 26%. But clearly we had to take some Forex impact on that, some accounting rules which makes that all the forward obligations have to put in, which brought the profitability to a lower level. Still, it's a very, very good profit, and just the underlying business are strong. You know, I'm by no means in a position to predict where both of the elements are going. What we do, however, is we take some hedging on the currency, and the internationalization to some extent is a natural hedge, right? We get foreign currency coming in, we fly more international, we get more foreign customers, and that will bring in more foreign currency.
Well, last time we met you, we spoke about your business class. So how has been the response so far, and what's your plan over there?
Okay. Well, it's very exciting, and thank you so much for bringing it up. The first flight started in the middle of November. We announced it, obviously, in August when Indigo turned 18, August last year. Indigo's 18th anniversary, we said, you know, this is what we're going to do. The actual launch was in November on Delhi, Bombay. Very well received, a lot of positive reactions from the market. It's a refreshing product, right? It's tailor-made for the market, and a lot of positive reactions from customers. By the end of last calendar year, all our 40 flights a day between Delhi and Mumbai, 20 each direction, are all being served now with this new product. 10th of Jan, we started on Delhi, Bangalore, and soon we also start on Delhi, Chennai. So we continue to build on that, and by the end of the year 25, we'll have some 45-ish planes in this configuration to serve all the metro-to-metro routes.
And let's talk about certain other things apart from your airline. One thing that's going to be there is the new aviation bill, the bill that's going to be impacting airlines aviation. How do you see it? Is it being positive, going to be positive for you or for the aviation sector, or what impact do you see?
Yeah, well, maybe first a kind of disclaimer. It still has to be approved, so yeah. that's there. So that's the disclaimer prior. If I take a step back without going to the details, you know, India, rightfully so, has the ambition to become a global aviation player, right? With that, you need to adjust some of your practices to what some of the global practices. And I think some of the leasing and whatever is being set up now in the gift city is supported by what is in this bill. So we're in fact connecting some of the Indian practices to some of the global practices, and that in general will clearly be positive for the aviation sector. The rest of the world, because aviation is a global business, we deal with leasing companies, different part of the world, producers, different part of the world. So I'm sure it will be perceived as a positive step forward.
And a few days from now, in fact within a week from now, budget is going to come. So do you think big reforms or big support this time for the aviation sector that's going to come because the government would like to improve the overall connectivity or making India a hub? what steps, according to you, or announcements should be made from the government side?
Well, I'm by no means in a position to make any prediction on that. I'm way too far off from that thing. What I can say more generically, 2025 is going to be a very important year for Indian aviation, because we'll have two big new airports opening, and Delhi and Mumbai, for the first time in history, will be a dual airport system. And that's already in place in Shanghai, in New York, in London, in Paris, in Tokyo. All these places have dual airports. And now for the first time, these big Indian cities in Delhi and Mumbai will have two airports. They will open in this year. So that in itself is an incredible, I would say, stimulus for aviation in India. So the bill will have a lot of details on what to be done further and important. And I think the aviation and infrastructure, and there are some international reports, every rupee invested in aviation will turn into 3 rupees for the overall economy. So it is actually an investment. Whatever you invest in aviation is an investment in the future of the economy of the country itself.
And one thing about the airfares, the coming few months, how do you see the airfares moving? Would you see them going up from here, or how do you see airfares performing now?
Yeah, well, we've given some guidance today on the first quarter on the yields compared to last year, where we set an early single-digit number. I think the demand in the last quarter has been very strong. We expect that demand to continue to be strong. Whatever we've seen so far is continuing to be strong.
One question which is entirely over the last few weeks, the debates going on about work-life balance. We would like to know your work-life balance mantra for yourself as well as for Indigo, because it happens to be a profession where it's needed to, the working hours are long. So what's your mantra for yourself and for the airline?
I think what's very important is keeping an eye on health. And what I do for myself, I try to go to the gym every morning, run or walk, but what exactly you do, it doesn't matter too much whether you run or whether you do yoga or you meditate. I think that balance is important. And if you ask me personally, I'm very committed to do that, and that's my way to keep work-life balance in sort of keep your sort of body in preparedness for whatever you do on the work part. At Indigo, we do a lot on that. We have health trainings, we give a lot of education, we have even some coaches on that respect. So I think it's a very important part for us, and that goes for people working in the offices, but also people in the operation.
Great, Pieter. Pleasure having you once again, answering all our questions. And thanks, and wish you all the very best for next few quarters.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.